welcome to SEC Media Days, day number one. Of course, LSU on day number one. Scott Rabalais joining us here from the Baton Rouge Advocate. And Scott, I got to tell everybody, first of all, brought to you by J.E. Dunn, our great sponsor. If you want to work for J.E. Dunn, top 100 workplace in America, so go check them out. Scott, Brian Kelly today, his first experience as an SEC coach. How do we grade him? You've been to a lot of these. You've covered a lot of coaches. What were your thoughts on just his first day?
Yeah, I thought he handled himself the way he needed to, and I think he needed to project there's a new era. This is a program and a coaching staff to be taken seriously. But he also was able to be self-deprecating a little bit, too. You know, someone asked him the question, what accent would you say is your favorite food? And he said, well, I got a combination of a Boston accent and a Midwestern accent and now a Louisiana accent. So, you know, referring to that viral video from the basketball game, you know, when he was first hired. So I thought he handled himself pretty well. You know, it's he's been very good for us to deal with so far, and pretty forthcoming. And I think you need to project a projection of seriousness and you know, the most accomplished, most respected coaches that I've ever seen at LSU were guys who were a little more no nonsense, and that was Nick Saban and Bill Arnsparger back in the 80s. And I think Brian Kelly is someone in that vein.
Yeah, and I agree with you because you have the right answer. Crawfish etouffee. I mean, that's the right answer.
And grilled oysters. I would go with that one. Char grilled oysters, or if you never had them, folks, you need to come have some in New Orleans.
Little cheddar on top, little jalapeno, maybe.
A lot of garlic. A lot of garlic and yes, and cheese, yes.
So he also said today, and this is the real important stuff that you and I like to talk about, he also said today that he had never caught a fish before in his entire life, and he went backwater fishing in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fouchon, is that? Fouchon, and he went and caught a fish, and he goes, it's the first time I've ever caught a fish. And I was like, Brian, you're almost like 65, 70 years old. Like, you haven't caught a fish in your whole life? I do think that the cultural thing is way overrated, though. I think you and I have actually talked about that. Nick Saban wasn't tied to Louisiana. If you come in and you put in your culture, your philosophy, LSU's got the players and it's got the brand to win football games.
Yeah, I mean, look at the national championship coaches at LSU. Paul Dietzel was from Ohio and it ties to Army. Les Miles was from the Midwest. Nick Saban's from West Virginia. Ed Orgeron was as fit as you could have, right, and he ends up not being able to sustain the program and gets fired. You know, he's as Louisiana as they come. So I think it's overrated. Like, people, will he be accepted? Will he fit at Louisiana? If he wins games, they'll accept him. If they don't, it doesn't matter if you're a native son like Ed Orgeron. They're going to want you out. And LSU went 11-12 the last 2 years, and they had to make a change. You can't do that at LSU. And Brian Kelly knows that. The bar is set very high, but the ability to win is very high. Someone else asked him, did the losses to Alabama when you see them in the playoffs impact your decision? He said, well, no, I wouldn't say that, but it's the chance to have all the tools you need to win at a place like LSU, which has won the most national titles, has been up and down, but has won the most national titles over the last 20 years next to Alabama. And I think that's what attracted him.
Well, it is talking season, so eventually you're going to tell a couple of white lies about why maybe you left Notre Dame to go to Louisiana, but that's just my opinion. He wants the five-star recruits. He wants to beat Alabama in those games, and that's what you can do at LSU. Much harder to do that at Notre Dame. I was talking to B.J. Ojolari about the A&M rivalry, and he said, yeah, I got a bunch of guys over there that I've known really well. I am convinced, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm convinced that LSU and A&M is now a more hated, more deeply rooted rivalry than even LSU-Bama or maybe some of the other ones that LSU's had. Magnolia Bowl is a great one, but because of the I-10 thing, because of Katrina and displacement of people, because of the history in the 70s and 80s, and he said, you know what, I got a bunch of guys that play over there, and we know each other really well. Do you believe, am I right that LSU and A&M are blossoming into a bigger rival than almost anything else that LSU faces right now?
I think it's growing, but I think that LSU, there's still this big inferiority complex with Alabama, and the fact that Nick Saban was LSU's coach and he went over there. It's more about, it's probably more about Nick than it is about Alabama. But Texas A&M, you have a lot of those similarities. There's geographic similarities. It's the closest two schools from LSU's perspective. The whole petrochemical industry. More LSU alums live in Houston than anywhere outside of Louisiana. It has become a great rival, and of course you've had some of the things, the 7 overtime game and the fight afterwards, and LSU beat them the next year, and they beat LSU, and it's gone back and forth, and so I think I think it has. Like they used to play a lot. LSU in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. LSU and Texas A&M used to play a lot. What's going to be interesting to me is with Texas and OU joining the league, will this continue to be such a big rivalry? Will they continue to still play on the last weekend of the season or not? Because LSU's issue continues to be whoever they have a big rivalry with, that school has someone bigger. Alabama's got Auburn. Ole Miss has the Egg Bowl with Mississippi State and vice versa. Texas A&M has Texas, and are they going to play again in the last game of the year? I've heard it both ways. I think if there's 3 permanent opponents per school with a 9-game schedule, I think LSU and A&M continue to play every year. But if it's just one, then I don't think Texas A&M is going to be that one.
I tend to agree with that. I'd love to see it as a permanent rivalry here. So the actual team, there's obviously a quarterback battle. I think they're a better situation this year at this time than they were last year at this time for the quarterback situation. But the offensive and defensive lines are huge questions as well. Which one do you think is more I think they're going to be pretty good. I think they're going to hit the over. I think Brian Kelly gets them to a point where they're pretty good quickly. I think they're limited from an upside standpoint, but I do think they're going to be pretty good quickly. Quarterback situation gets ironed out first. Offensive and defensive line gets ironed out first, and which one is more important?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this team has an upside of about 9 wins, but I don't think they're going to win only 6. I've seen a lot of 6.5 predictions, and I think that's a little low for LSU. I think they got a great chance if they can beat Florida State in the opener and beat Mississippi State at home and go to Auburn. They have a chance to start 5-0, and then you gain some confidence, and then you hit the real tough part of the schedule in October and November. But clearly, got to figure out the quarterback situation. You went from having a wide receiver play quarterback in the Texas Bowl against Kansas State to now you got 4 guys in there, including Miles Braden, who's a 6th-year senior, who was here when Danny Etling was here in 2017. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Jaden Daniels coming in from Arizona State. Miles, I like him for the experience. Daniels, I think people think he fits more the offense that Kelly and Mike Denbrock want to run at LSU, so we're going to see. That was not decided at all in the spring. They're going to have to iron that out in August. Offensive line is key. Brian Kelly said that to us earlier today. The success of this team depends on how the offensive line comes together. I think the defensive line is going to be very good with guys like B.J. Ojolari, who's here, as kind of a rush end. They've got some talent and depth there, and to me, that's always what's made the good SEC teams, the elite teams, really good, is their ability on the defensive line. So that needs to be better.
Could this LSU team be 8-4, good, much better than last year, and still finish 5th, maybe in the West?
Well, it's a deep division. I mean, I think they're going to be picked 3rd or 4th behind Alabama, A&M, and maybe Arkansas. Depends on how much faith you have in Ole Miss, who beat LSU last year in Oxford, or not. Miss State, are they gonna improve? It's tough. I mean, you could go 4-4 and be tied way down there. I could see that, and then win the rest of your games. So that's definitely a possibility for LSU. I don't think anyone, even though it's a ardent LSU fan, I don't think expecting them to be back here in Atlanta in December in the championship game. But I think the chance of them going to a reasonably good bowl game, winding up in Tampa or Orlando or something like that after going 8-4 or 9-3 is a possibility.
There you have it. Nobody better in the business. Scott Rabalais, Baton Rouge Advocate, covering, of course, all things LSU. Check him out on the Twitter as well as the .com. And, of course, remember J.E. Dunn sponsoring all the great content from SEC Media Days this week. We'll talk to you guys again soon.